Now, in terms of where we go next, here's the one thing that we've got to do. At minimum, we've got to increase the debt ceiling. At minimum. I think we need to do more than that. But as I've said before, Republican leader McConnell in the Senate put forward a plan that said he's going to go ahead and give me the responsibility to raise the debt ceiling. That way, folks in Congress can vote against it, but at least it gets done. I'm willing to take the responsibility. That's my job. So if they want to give me the responsibility to do it, I'm happy to do it. But what we're not going to do is to continue to play games and string this along for another 8, 9 months and then have to go through this whole exercise all over again. That we're not going to do. Jessica Young.
Standing here tonight, Mr. President, can you assure the American people that they will get their Social Security checks on August 3rd? And if not, who's to blame?
Well, when it comes to all the checks, not just Social Security, veterans, people with disabilities, about 70 million checks are sent out each month. If we default, then we're going to have to make adjustments. And I'm already consulting with Secretary Geithner in terms of what the consequences would be. We should not even be in that kind of scenario. And if Congress, and in particular, the House Republicans, are not willing to make sure that we avoid default, then I think it's fair to say that they would have to take responsibility for whatever problems arise in those payments. Because let me repeat, I'm not interested in finger pointing and I'm not interested in blame, but I just want the facts to speak for themselves. We have put forward a plan that is more generous to Republican concerns than a bipartisan plan that was supported by a number of Republican senators, including at least one that is in Republican leadership in the Senate. Now, I'll leave it up to the American people to make a determination as to how fair that is. And if the leadership cannot come to an agreement in terms of how we move forward, then I think they will hold all of us accountable. But that shouldn't even be an option. That should not be an option. I'm getting letters from people who write me and say, at the end of every month, I have to skip meals. Senior citizens on Social Security who are just hanging on by a thread. Folks on, who have severe disabilities, who are desperate every single month to try to figure out how they're going to make ends meet. But it's not just those folks. You've got business contractors who are providing services to the federal government, who have to wonder, are they going to be able to get paid? And what does that do in terms of their payrolls? You've got just a huge number of people who, in one way or another, interact with the federal government. And even if you don't, even if you're not a recipient of Social Security, even if you don't get veterans benefits or disabilities, imagine what that does to the economy when suddenly 70 million checks are put at risk. I mean, if you're a business out there, that is not going to be good for economic growth. And that's the #1 concern of the American people. So we've got to get it done. It is not an option not to do it.
Your degree of confidence?
I am confident simply because I cannot believe that Congress would end up being that irresponsible that they would not send a package that avoids a self-inflicted wound to the economy at a time when things are so difficult. Scott Horsley.
Mr. President, can you explain why you were offering a deal that was more generous than the Gang of Six, which you seem to be embracing on Tuesday with your review?
Because what had become apparent was that Speaker Boehner had some difficulty in his caucus. There are a group of his caucus that actually think default would be okay and have said that they would not vote for increasing the debt ceiling under any circumstances. And so I understand how they get themselves stirred up and the sharp ideological lines that they've drawn. And ultimately, my responsibility is to make sure that we avoid extraordinary difficulties to American people and American businesses. And so, you know, unfortunately, when you're in these negotiations, you don't get 100% of what you want. You may not even get 60 or 70% of what you want. But I was willing to try to persuade Democratic leadership as well as Democratic members of Congress that even a deal that is not as balanced as I think it should be is better than no deal at all. And I was willing to persuade Democrats that getting a handle on debt and deficit reduction is important to Democrats just as much as it's important to Republicans. And frankly, a lot of Democrats are persuaded by that. As I said in the last press conference, if you're a progressive, you should want to get our fiscal house in order, because once we do, it allows us to then have a serious conversation about the investments that we need to make, like infrastructure, like rebuilding our roads and our bridges and airports, like investing more in college education, like making sure that we're focused on the kinds of research and technology that's going to help us win the future. It's a lot easier to do that when we've got our fiscal house in order. And that was an argument that I was willing to go out and make to a lot of skeptical Democrats, as you saw yesterday. But ultimately, that's what we should expect from our leaders. If this was easy, it would have already been done. And I think what a lot of the American people are so disappointed by is this sense that all the talk about responsibility, all the talk about the next generation, all the talk about making sacrifices, that when it comes to actually doing something difficult, folks walk away. And last point I'll make here, I mean, I've gone out of my way to say that both parties have to make compromises. And I think this whole episode has indicated the degree to which at least a Democratic president has been willing to make some tough compromises. So when you guys go out there and write your stories, this is not a situation where somehow this was the usual food fight between Democrats and Republicans. A lot of Democrats stepped up in ways that were not advantageous politically. So we've shown ourselves willing to do the tough stuff on an issue that Republicans ran on.